Since the 90s, the Spyro franchise has given us some colourful and slightly memorable villains over the years. This is my list of the top 9 best ones. Now, I just want to point out, I'm not going to include any of the boss characters. Why? Well, it's simply because, personally, I don't feel like they leave much of an impact. They're just obstacles when you really think about it. And 2, I won't be including any villains from the Skylander franchise. Why? Well, it's because I consider it a separate franchise, and it only includes Spyro because it just does. But anyway, on to the list. Grendor, the main villain of Spyro Season of Ice for the Game Boy Advance. He's at the bottom of the list because, well, there's really not much to him. His whole motivation is he's got 2 heads and 2 headaches, and he just wants to get rid of them. Simple as that. He started off as a Rhinoc, who after the events of Year of the Dragon has become unemployed. So he took up a job in a library and read some books and tried to become, in his own words, more smarter and more powerful. He ended up getting 2 heads as a result. And that's all there is to him. His boss fight's not really that interesting. It's pretty easy. All he does is summon these ice balls and tries to hit Spyro with them, and that's it. At the end of the game, he manages to get cured of his condition and becomes good. So yeah, pretty bland, pretty forgettable. Moving on. The Sorcerer, the main villain of Shadow Legacy. The Sorcerer does have a lot of potential to be a proper main villain, but the story doesn't really show him as much. He mostly appears in the cutscenes. It explains his plan, which is to take away all the dragon's magic by summon them. God, I can't even say the word. By trapping them into the Shadow Clemency, I believe that's pronounced. However, apart from that, there's really nothing else to him. Even his design's not really that interesting. And his boss fight is pretty simple and not very challenging. So, yeah, he does have good potential, but overall, not that interesting. And, well, there's just been better villains, hasn't there? On a side note, a lot of fans believe he's the classic incarnation of Malefor, who we'll get to eventually. But, apart from that, since the game ended on a cliffhanger of him escaping and promising to attack again, which never gets followed upon, I can't really add anything else to him. Gull, the Ape King. The main villain of the Eternal Night and second in command to Malefor. Gull the Ape King was the ape that stole Cinder's egg and took it to Malefor to be corrupted. Gull leads the apes into causing the Eternal Night on the Dragon Temple and plans to use Malefor's power to take revenge on the dragons. While his boss fight is ferocious and his appearance is pretty intimidating, at the end of the day, Gull was just a high-ranking henchman. However, I will say his death is pretty brutal. Evil Cinder. I know, I'm putting a fan favourite right near the bottom, but let me explain why. From what I could tell from the fan base, Cinder is more popular when she's a goodie than a baddie, and while Evil Cinder does have a really fantastic design, her role and story is what keeps her interesting. Originally a dragon similar to Spyro, Cinder gets corrupted by Malefor's magic and becomes his ferocious, what would you call it? Well, she was more of a pet to him, really. His attack dog. And while her boss fights are challenging and really sets up the the setting that the Legend of Spyro series is set in. Also, I just want to point out, in many ways, she's almost like the evil counterpart to Spyro. And speaking of which, Dark Spyro is not on the list. I just want to quickly clarify that Dark Spyro will not be on the list because he hasn't technically made an appearance in the games yet. So, yeah, in case you're wondering why he's not there, that's the reason. Red, the evil Dragon Elder, the main villain of A Hero's Tale. Red was originally one of the Dragon Elders. However, his lust for power caused him to get banished from the council. Many years later, he returns with an army of Norks to place dark gems all over the realms to drain them of their life and resources so he can take over the world. You fight Red twice in the game, first in his normal dragon form and again when he turns himself into a robot called Mecha Red. While I would love to have put him up higher on the list, I had to put him lower as in Shadow Legacy it's revealed that he was brainwashed by the sorcerer, which kind of makes him a bit too similar to Cinder in many ways. The only reason why he's above Cinder though is because we didn't know that until another game. In The Hero's Tale, he's played as a serious threat with a slightly snobbish comedic attitude. Nasty Nork, the main villain of Spyro the Dragon and the one that started it all. According to background material, Nasty Nork used to live with the Dragon Realms peacefully until he started causing trouble in the Dragon Realms, causing him to get banished into his own land called Nasty's World. Using the spell he acquired from unknown ways, he was capable of turning different dragon gems into soldiers, other Norks. After watching the Dragon's news on telly, he gets insulted by being repeatedly called ugly and non-threatening, causing him to cast a magic spell that cause a magic spell that trapped every dragon in crystal forms except for Spyro. Throughout the rest of the game, Nasty's Norks try to take over the Dragon Realms. At the end of the game, you fight Nasty, but in his own world. However, you don't exactly fight him directly. Once you get onto his platform, he starts running away, and you have to try and catch up with him. Which is why he's not as high on the list. Even though he is the original Spyro villain, he doesn't put up much of a fight, making him come across as a bit of a coward. However, he does return in A Hero's Tale and puts up much more of a fight, but he's not the main villain this time. The Sorceress, the main villain of Year of the Dragon. The Sorceress was the one who was responsible for banishing the dragons from the Forgotten Realm, taking all their magic with him. Many years later, she tries to bring the magic back by kidnapping all the unborn dragon hatch, or the unborn dragons, newborn dragons. However, it's later revealed in the game that she plans on using their wings to create a magic potion that will make her immortal. She doesn't have to do it, she just does it to stop them from squiggling too much. A pretty dark motivation for a light-hearted game. You fight her twice, once at the end of the game, and another time at the end of the super bonus round. The reason why she's only number 3 is because, despite having numerous cutscenes of her creating monsters to defeat Spyro, she never actually interacts with the Purple Dragon until the very end of the game, and even then she doesn't even talk to him. It's just a fight and that's it. Malifaux, the Dark Master, the main villain of Dawn of the Dragon, and the main villain of the Legend of Spyro series overall. Even though he only appears at the very end of the game, Manafor's presence is felt throughout all 3 games. His corruption with Cinder and his alliance with Gull and the Apes. He's returned at the end of Eternal Night, brings with him death and destruction across the Dragon lands. However, even though I would have loved to have put him as number 1, I had to give him 2nd place. Why? Because, well, when you finally encounter him in Dawn of the Dragon, despite all the build-up, he just comes across as a generic, demonic villain who has a really, really badly distorted voice that's hard to understand him, especially since it's Mark Hamill voicing him. Before I get to number 1, here's a quick honourable mention to Moneybags. The reason why I didn't put Moneybags on the list itself is because, well, he's not really a villain in all the games. The only game he actually plays a villainous role is Year of the Dragon, where he holds all the other playable characters for ransom for the sorceress. And while he is greedy, he doesn't really do anything too bad other than trying to con Spyro out of gems. Despite this, he's still pretty hateable in the Spyro community and video game fans overall. So I had to include him on the list somehow. Ripto. The main villain of Ripto's Rage, Enter the Dragonfly, Season of Fire and Attack of the Rhinox. I had to include him as number 1. Not only is he the most recurring villain, but he's also the most memorable next to Manafor. While he doesn't come across as too intimidating at first, Ripto makes up for it for his sheer determination and his ferociousness. His boss battles are usually regarded as one of the more entertaining and epic in the series. And while he isn't too comical, he has the most interactions with Spyro than any other villain in the series, making the rivalry between the two much more personal. And that's all I've got to say on all these Spyro villains. I hope you enjoyed the list. If you have a favourite Spyro villain, please let me know in the comments below. And I hope you have a nice day.